Hi there guys, in my last video I 3D resin printed all the parts for this articulated Small Soldiers Insaniac figure, as well as testing the articulation points. If you've not seen part 1 of the video, I'll include a link in the description box below. The Insaniac file I'm printing is available on the Epic Props VIP store. I'll also include the link for it in the description box below. With all the pieces printed, it was time to prime them. I attached all the pieces onto my paint stand with blue tack and took them outside to paint. In my previous videos, I only showed one side of the parts being primed, but I promise, once the paint is fully dried, I do flip them over and paint the other side too. In this video, I'll specifically be painting Insaniac's head, and hopefully provide you with some helpful tips on how to achieve certain details for any of your own projects you might be working on. The first detail I wanted to paint was the inside of Insaniac's mouth. I used Citadel's Kids Live Flesh layer paint and did a couple of coats of this. Once that had dried, I went over this with one coat of Crawford & Black's acrylic pink rose colour, but before it dried, I removed as much of it as possible with a paper towel and cotton buds. This gives a nice two-tone colour scheme, which I'll be doing for all the different colour shades on this project. I started going over the teeth, eyes and bones for the necklace with white acrylic paint, again doing a couple of coats on each part. Now I wanted to give all these whites a yellowish tint to them, so I went over them with a yellow acrylic. This yellow actually ended up too fluorescent, but I later just dry brushed some more white on top to bring this tone down, and it turned out great. It was then time to glue the top set of teeth into the mouth. I used super glue to do this, and held them in place when they dried. Unfortunately, there was an obvious gap between the top gums and the top row of teeth, so I just used some milliput to close this gap. If you rub a small drop of water over the milliput, you can actually get it really smooth, and it blends into any surrounding areas nicely. Once the milliput had dried, I did have to paint over it with the pink skin tones again, but it was worth it. I then marked the pupils onto the eyes using pencil, and used a blue marker pen for the iris on the smaller right eye. I went over the pencil marks with a ballpoint pen to make the details pop more. Finally, for the blood vessels on the larger left eye, I simply used a red coloured pencil. Once the mouth and the eyes were painted, I took these outside to do a gloss clear coat. I gave this clear coat 24 hours to dry, and it was on to painting the rest of the head. I used Crawford & Black's acrylic red for the first layer of Insaniac's face paint. I was going to say war paint, but the Gorgonites are supposed to be peaceful. Once 2 coats of the base layer were complete, I went over this with a wash of darker red, and wiped away as much as I could. I know you professional painters will be absolutely horrified to see me go over the teeth and eyes I just painted, but there's a method to my madness. Because the gloss clear coat had created a protective seal over these areas, I simply went back over the teeth and eyes with a wet cotton bud to clean them up. I then did the 2 white line markings using a fine brush. I did a couple of layers on each to make them pop. It was at this point I realised I'd messed up with the red. After looking at reference images online, I realised that the red is not meant to fully extend to the back of Insaniac's head. I simply masked this area with green tape so I could paint the correct areas blue and get a nice clean line in the process. For the blue shades, I used 2 coats of Citadel's Modern Blue layer paint, and after that, a wash of Crawford & Black's Ultramarine Blue. I had previously clear coated my Archer and Chip Hazard statues with gloss clear coat, and as the user JMLamp6998 rightly pointed out on my Chip Hazard video, these puppets aren't meant to be completely glossed. So for Insaniac, I masked off his glossy mouth and eyes with blue tack and green tape, and sealed the rest of his face with a matte clear coat. The last thing left to do was to give Insaniac's hair a coat of gloss black paint, since it's meant to look rubbery. And once both sides had dried, I glued it on top of his head using super glue. So here's what we're left with at the end of part 2. A completely painted head, and a completely unpainted body. I really wanted to finish this project in 2 parts, but painting the head alone took up a full video of its own. Regardless, I hope you found some use in this mini tutorial. and I promise that in my next video I'll be painting the rest of the body and finally assembling him together. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, and if you want to see part 3 or more projects like this in the future, your subscription to my channel really helps out. Thank you for watching.